Hi, welcome to my channel. I don't really know how to start a YouTube. I don't know what I'm doing. Everything says not to do an intro video, but that feels kind of weird. So I'm Trisha. I'm a stained glass artist. I am self-taught. I've been doing a lot of mediums of art over the last decade, and in the last year I've discovered a love for stained glass. It feels correct. I think I did it in the past life. And so here we are. I am going to do a bunch of prep tonight for a class that I am teaching tomorrow. We're making potion bottles. I'm super excited. Whoop. They're like little health potions because I'm a nerd. That's the other thing. I'm super nerdy. My stained glass is inspired by like nerdy things, Neopets. It's inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, Lord of the Rings, video games, books. I'm also a fantasy author. Whee, did I mention I have ADHD? Yeah, I guess I'm just going to take you along with me to do glass class prep for tomorrow. And then I'm going to talk a bit about why I'm doing YouTube, I guess. Let's go. So how did I become a stained glass artist in the first place? That is a bit of a long and complicated story that I will try to make concise. So in 2018, I found myself as a new mom, but also with a new slew of health issues that had kind of been laying dormant for a long time, but I was ignoring it. Up until then, I had been a personal trainer and I was in a school program to be a physical therapy assistant. And then over the course of 6 months or so into 2019, my body just, my joints weren't working. Everything just was shutting down. And, again, I was a new mom, so I didn't know what was going on. So I kind of found myself during this time, especially when my son was a baby and like I could put him in his little carrier and he was just a little potato and he would just sit there in a coffee shop. I started painting. And now this was with like the really crappy paper and like Crayola watercolor paints, but it worked. And my husband, who's a fantastic artist, him and I would go to the coffee shop with our baby in his little carrier and just do art. And I made a lot of really bad art, which is where it all should start. And then I had a friend who was a watercolor artist, and she was like, "Girl, I'm seeing these pictures of your art and you're using chalky Crayola watercolor paints." And she gifted me a really nice palette of like student grade Winsor & Newton watercolor paints. And from there, I kind of became feverish in, oh, I've never considered myself an artist before. And that was a new experience and a new idea that maybe I could be an artist. And so then again, fast forward to 2020, we know what happened there. So between me just having a toddler and then playing Animal Crossing relentlessly and painting, that was my life for that year. There was a lot more to it, a lot more stressful things happening, but I tried to create this little safe bubble for my toddler and I while my husband worked. And I just did art. And then suddenly I started learning how to do the botanical watercolor style of art. And that opened up my mind to my own possibilities. Again, I'd never really dabbled in art before, like on and off, but I never thought, oh, I could be one of those artists who just makes beautiful things. Well, apparently you have to make a lot of really ugly art before you can make beautiful art. And that's exactly what I did. So my hyperfixation in the pandemic was art. And then now here we are years later, 6 years later, and it has definitely paid off because in that time, I kind of bounced from job to job, trying to figure out where I belonged again, trying to find my sense of purpose while, raising my child, figuring out what is going on in the world, all of that. And also playing with other art mediums, because the other thing that I didn't get the opportunity to do that a lot of people do in middle school and high school is play. I didn't get to play with art and what I wanted to do and, all of that. So I spent my 30s playing with art. And, I did acrylic for a little bit, but I don't know, I have a hard time with it doesn't blend well. And then I went into like bookbinding because obviously I love reading and I love books. So I did bookbinding and I liked a lot all of the things that I have done. I really do enjoy. But the problem I kept running into is that I didn't see myself in my art. The watercolor paintings I did for the most part, but I always needed a reference, and so it just didn't feel like something that was me. So how did I get from botanical watercolor to stained glass? Because that is quite the leap. I'm well aware. And it's as simple as somebody believed in me. Actually, quite a few people believed in me because I think about a decade ago, my best friend took me to a stained glass class just for fun, for my birthday. And that was really great. And it was like cutting and grinding the glass, like it was from beginning to end, which is really impressive for that instructor. And that kind of just hovered in my mind for a long time. But obviously, what was I going to do about it? And then last year, I was talking to one of my other friends, who she has a very successful like woodworking business, and she's worked her ass off for that for the last like 5 years or so. And she dabbles in stained glass as well for her projects. And she just encouraged me to just go after it. And so she let me dig into her scrap bin and make little pieces without, like, I just freehanded stuff. I have a really ugly looking little Legend of Zelda piece that I tried making, and it worked. And I had fun, and the process felt nice. And then I found myself buying the grinder, buying a really cheap soldering iron, like kind of collecting everything for it. And in that time, I was dealing with a lot of pressure from kind of the job that I had was like really ramping up faster than I expected. I was trying to publish my first book. My husband had brain surgery the year before, and my soul dog died, and my dad got diagnosed with cancer. And then I finally got an endometriosis diagnosis. So everything was just like, this maybe isn't the best time to start a really like aggressive hobby. But I think that I needed it because I needed something to pull my mind out of myself, if that makes sense. And so I then discovered that I could use my own drawing skills that I learned from everything else. And in Procreate on my tablet, I could design my own patterns. So then suddenly I'm like, oh, I'm making nerdy art, I'm making fantasy art, and then I can make it into stained glass, all while listening to audiobooks, which is an absolute win in my mind. And that was the most important part of it for me is for the first time, I think, in my whole artist life, my art looks like me from beginning to end. And wouldn't you know, people like that. So then I started getting commissions. And then I have a lot of authors who have asked me to make their business card holders, which is so personal and so wonderful. And it makes me feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself while still filling my own cup. So that's just the long and short of how I got from point A to point B. And I'm really excited with where things are going. You know, I am fortunate that I already had an established community with my authorship and with the book community of Kansas City. So I know that I am privileged in the way that I got to start. I didn't have to start as an artist from ground zero. So I am very grateful to this community who helped give me the strength and the encouragement to chase my dreams. And I just wish that for anybody else who is listening. It's okay to be scared, but you still have to do it scared because the time will pass anyways. Thank you so much for spending time with me today in my studio. It means a lot to me that you're here at the very beginning, and I hope that you will stick with me as I grow this channel, figure out what I'm doing, and find my own inner peace again. If you like this video and you do want to stick around, I would invite you to like and subscribe. That does help me out and make sure you don't miss future videos. If you are curious about my stained glass pieces or my fantasy book, you can find them at my website, trisha-otis.com. Until next time, sending you all the light and love in my soul.